You ready, Colonel? Turn him loose, McCartney!
Does America still have true grit? No, say some.
I can't use a knife. My mom thinks that I'm gonna cut my fingers off.
And why is taking a risk becoming illegal? That upsets the cowboy libertarian.
The idea that you're going to retaliate and ban something is crazy.
Should behavior like this be banned?
It's time to toughen up the wussification of American men. This is it.
This group of Purdue engineers offended people because they're all white.
This is engineering.
Is that offensive? At least some Americans still have grit, like the businessman who fought back after this happened.
Mile-wide tornado carved a path of destruction.
Grit. Whatever happened to it? That's our show tonight.
And now, John Stossel.
The dictionary says grit means firmness of character, pluck, indomitable spirit. Some people think about cowboys like characters played by John Wayne, Clint Eastwood. Maybe some people think about Patrick Doranson. Doranson? Who's he? Well, he's a radio host who calls himself the cowboy libertarian and who argues that our bloated government is killing off grit in America. What do you mean?
We have become a dependent state. We've decided to trade our freedom for security. We've decided to say, let the government handle these things. Let's just be dependent on the government.
You point out that our parents were very different.
Absolutely. Our parents were the ones who said, look, you want to go and be something in your life, you got to get out there and you've got to start working when you're young. You've got to start doing things and you've got to demonstrate the ability to stand up on your own 2 feet. You know, in the last few years, we've been teaching kids in school self-esteem instead of self-reliance. And that's a big difference. Self-esteem is nice.
They like themselves. That's good.
Well, that's great that they like themselves. We're building a nice nation of narcissists. Look, life has risk. You can't legislate, litigate, or regulate your way out of every problem. Some things just happen.
And the one thing we baby boomers embraced was the welfare state. And I believed in it when I was in college. This was going to end poverty. And it's a good example of the dependence you talk about. Because if you look at a graph of what happened after the war on poverty began, it's true. Poverty dropped. In the first 5 years, 9 million people were helped off of poverty. But then look what's happened since. The line's gone up and down. We taught people to be dependent, and progress stopped. And even more interesting, look what happened at the 5 years before the war on poverty. And you see that people were lifting themselves out of poverty on their own without government. Government, in effect, helped a few people and then stopped the progress.
Yeah. Look what else happened. I'll give you a good example. Katrina. Hurricane Katrina was predicted because now we have the ability through science to know that hurricane's coming your way and it's going to hit New Orleans like a powerful, powerful fist. So what happened? People sat there. They waited for the government to come and bring the bus to take them to safety. I'm going to tell you something. If you got 10 days warning, you start walking. You pack up your gear. You say, I got to get out of here because I've got to save myself. I got to get to higher ground. No, people sat there and they said, wait till the government comes and fixes me, and then we end up with a bunch of people sitting in the Superdome. American people have become more urbanized and more suburbanized. And when that happens, they want more things. And the politicians are more than happy to say, look, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you this service and this dependency and that dependency. And the people say, fine, fine, yeah, let's keep doing that. Let's just keep doing that. Well, give us more goodies. You know, de Tocqueville said, once Congress can find out that it can bribe the public with its own money, it's the end of the republic. Well, guess what? Congress found out how to do it, and so did every local government and local official. So they just keep taking your tax money and say, we're going to do these wonderful things for you, instead of saying, America, stand up on your own 2 feet again.
Another example that you point out is that government kills grit by offering extended unemployment benefits. And I agree, we could learn from Denmark. The socialist government there once gave laid-off workers 5 years of unemployment benefits. When did many Danes finally find work? Surprise! After exactly 5 years. So Denmark cut benefits to 4 years. Danes then found jobs in 4 years. Now Denmark's limited the benefits to 2 years. They at least are learning. People in this country, though, say, no, we should go the other way. These people are suffering. Unemployment's high. Give them more benefits.
Socialist governments in Europe are running away from the welfare state. They're running away from the fire. Americans are dousing themselves in gasoline and running towards the fire that's eventually going to burn down the whole structure because we just can't afford these things. But more than that, it's about the character of the nation. If we keep letting the government do things for us, what does it say about us as a people?
Now, I suppose some of you might say it's easy for us to talk about the harm done by the welfare state. We're two privileged white guys. But what about poorer people? And what about minorities? Well, let's talk to someone who's not white and grew up far from privilege. Deneen Borelli is the author of Blacklash, a book that claims the left is driving Americans to the government plantation. So, government plantation? What do you mean?
Well, John, listen, the government, economic government plantation, because there are way too many people who feel they are entitled to government support for their everyday wants and needs. When you're looking at the number of people who are obtaining government assistance, you're also trading that for votes in some instances, especially when
and the number keeps going up, regardless of what happens with the economy.
The numbers are deplorable. Over 47 million people are on food stamps. Let me put that in perspective. The state of California, there are more people on food stamps than citizens in the state of California.
But some people are genuinely unable to find work. Some people don't.
The jobs are out there. I mean, it might not be the job that you want. I mean, as I laid out in my book, Blacklash, I've worked in a number of jobs I wasn't always crazy about. Think about the New Jersey Department of Motor Vehicles, working there without a computer, with manual typewriters, long lines and people coming in angry because it's the end of the month. It was a great experience, but it wasn't the ideal situation, but I did it.
And the jobs are out there. Last year I went to a job center and welfare office not far from here and asked people, why are you getting handouts?
No jobs around?
No.
Really? I asked my team to check that out. Within a few blocks of that welfare office, they found lots of businesses that want to hire people. Of 79 businesses that we asked in less than 2 hours, 40 said they would hire. 24 said they'd take people with no experience. The owner of this restaurant said he'd hire lots of people.
How many could come with no experience?
I would probably take like 9. Probably would take 9 and train them.
And at the welfare office, people told us there are no jobs.
No, there's plenty of jobs.
Outside that welfare office, we met this woman who said she works for Human Resources.
There are no jobs around?
I don't think so. There wouldn't be this line out here if it was.
Is it possible they're not really trying?
Some of them, a lot of them are not, but you can tell the ones that are trying.
And do you think you and Human Resources encourage people to be dependent?
Yes, we do.
So what should be done about that?
I don't really know. I don't really know. I guess stop giving away the money and then they'll get a job.
And you work for the government.
That's right.
It's refreshing when someone in the government says that.
Yeah, you know, the jobs are out there. You need to take responsibility, not rely on the government. The government has extended unemployment benefits, and then after that, people go on disability somehow. I still don't understand how they're able to do that. But we're broke.
Let's go into the touchy racial part. I mean, you use this phrase, government plantation. Plantation implies slavery. That's certainly very different.
Well, I call it economic slavery. And when you look at the people who are relying on government for their everyday wants and needs, those resources are limited. And with those resources come restrictions. If you are gainfully employed, you can do whatever you want with your resources, and the sky is the limit. So you can make as much money as you want. When I left home, I didn't know what job I was going to take, but I always took a job where I knew I could learn something, gain from it, and advance from there.
You say growing up, you heard messages from so-called civil rights leaders that said, don't do that?
Yes, and we still hear the same messages, and I call them the black liberal establishment, community activists, some pastors.
What's the message?
NAACP. The message is that blacks are victims, blacks need special treatment, and it's the same message
It's a
I've
white
heard
racist
then
society, you
today.
can't make it.
And to blame others.
Charles Murray said in the book Losing Ground that helped turn things around. We tried to provide more for the poor and produced more poor instead. We inadvertently built a trap. That's what you both are arguing.
Absolutely. Look what we did. We said to people, have babies. We're going to pay you to have children. We said we're going to give you aid for this. We're going to give you welfare for not working. We're going to give you housing that you don't have to pay for. If you have no skin in the game, if you go to an apartment and you don't have to fill out a lease and give the guy a deposit and then pay your rent every month, what's the difference? You have no skin in the game. She says plantations. I say we've created vertical Indian reservations in our city where we're just warehousing human beings.
But you talk about children. The people on the left would say, you cut this out, you're punishing these children. They're innocent.
Of course, they're innocent. But at some point, you've got to break the cycle of poverty. You're not going to break the cycle of poverty if you keep making more poor people. Because we're now 4 or 5 generations into people who have nothing else than government support. I watch Judge Judy all the time, and she always asks these people about their case, and they don't know anything about the case they're being sued for. But then she says, how do you make a living? And you know what they say? Oh, I get WIC, I get AFDC. They know government programs like the back of their hand, but that's all they know.
Now, Deneen, on Amazon, we looked at your Amazon page for Blacklash.
Yes.
Some nasty comments about you. Jay Pettit says you're despicable. It's so easy and profitable to pander to the Republicans. Give them one more black face to try to show, see, we're not racist. Tricky Nikki says there are 2 types of conservatives, the very rich and fools. Ms. Borrelli falls into the latter category.
I'm an American, and I don't really care what the comments are that people write about. The reason they write those comments is to try to stifle me, to shut me down, because my message is resonating. And again, I'm about liberty.
Really?
I
It's
want
resonating?
people to be
Wait,
independent.
what do you mean it's resonating? I see the welfare state growing.
Well, I see people who are coming out of the closet. I call them black conservatives, closet black conservatives, who are coming out saying they appreciate what I do, what I say, but they're afraid to be targeted and criticized by their family, their friends, and their co-workers, when in fact they agree with what I say.
And when you say we're making progress and I'm skeptical, I'm thinking about things like SNAP, which is the new name for welfare, basically. I guess that less of a stigma.
Yeah.
It should say for stupid name for atrocious program. But in Rhode Island, they host bingo-themed parties and games for elderly people to encourage them to get food stamps. SNAP is the new food stamp program.
I find it to be utterly embarrassing. Our government is running ads, or was running ads, and having these parties to get more people to rely on the government. Remember, Obama said he wanted to fundamentally transform America. Getting people to be more dependent on the government is part of that plan, and it's the wrong plan for our country.
Just one last example about this. You see people begging in cities like this, and when I was a kid, I would feel sorry for them and give them money. Then we did tests and found that almost all of them had homes and were scamming people. And the social service agencies say, don't give to these people. I tried it for an hour and made $11. That's more than minimum wage. By giving money to those people, you are teaching them to be dependent or supporting their alcohol habit. You're saying, yeah, you don't need to work.
We're teaching people to eat fish. We're not teaching people how to fish. It's an old cliche, but it's true. The more you make people dependent on the government, they're not going to go out and try and find it themselves. We have to judge government programs, as Milton Friedman said, not by their intention, but by their effectiveness. And the problem is we got too many government programs that are ineffective.
And it seems you can't get rid of any of them. Thank you, Patrick Doranson, Deneen Borrelli. Coming up, we all want to protect our children, but as we protect them more, do we rob them of grit?
High boards once helped kids test their limits, but now Americans are told, get rid of risks, even good ones.
You know who Andrew Jackson was, our 7th president. He's the guy on the $20 bill. And during the Revolutionary War, Jackson volunteered to fight. He was 13 at the time. The British captured him and made him a servant for British officers. When one ordered Jackson to clean his boots, Jackson said no, and the officer lifted his sword and slashed Jackson's hand. Then Jackson nearly starved in a British prison camp. But he had grit. He survived and went on to become president. Do you have that much grit? Did you when you were a kid? I doubt that I have it now. And what about our kids? Today I hear parents saying they have to protect their kids from all danger. Some won't let teenagers go to school by themselves. And that's nuts, says Lenora Scasese.
Who is
America, whoever, your name is tough.
this lady?
America, she says, needs free-range kids.
Yes, they
Just
do.
the name of your website. What do you mean free-range?
Free-range kids are kids that we believe in. We don't think that they are in constant peril when they step outside. We don't think they need bodyguards. We
But
really
they're
believe that they can do
stupid
things on their
and
own.
vulnerable, and bad things do happen to them.
So we think that anytime anything bad happens to any kid in the world, oh my God, now we have to worry about that exact same thing. A kid got hurt in Utah doing something, I better not let my kid do it, which is why we don't let our kids walk to school, wait at the bus stop alone, play outside. You know what percentage of kids play outside after school unsupervised? I'm talking about
What
tweens.
percent?
Take a guess.
50?
50. That's like 1950. No, it's 6. 6% of children play outside on their own because parents are too afraid. They think that something terrible will happen. Either they'll be kidnapped, or they'll fall down and somehow they won't get up, or of course they'll be bullied. So no way can kids play on their own.
Now, you became the point person for this after you wrote an article about allowing your 9-year-old to here in New York
City. To fight in the Revolutionary War. Oh no, that's Andrew Jackson.
to take the subway by
Yes,
himself.
Right. That was.
And you were quickly called America's worst mom. If you Google America's worst mom, it's you.
It's me for 77 Google pages, last count, which was probably yesterday. Not that I Google myself obsessively, but yes.
So maybe you are the worst mom.
Maybe I am, but there are a lot of people who are starting to agree with me, and they're starting to realize that for some reason we've been sold on the idea that this generation of kids can't do anything on their own. And let me just give you a couple examples. Do you know that my friend's granddaughter is enrolled in what? She's about 7 months old. What kind of class?
I can't guess.
Take a guess. What do kids do at 7 months old?
Roll around the floor class.
No, that's the earlier class. That's Gymboree. No, she's enrolled in crawling class. Crawling.
Where they teach. Well, I see stores are selling things.
Stores are selling.
For that.
This is, I guess, you know, what you get on your way out of the crawling class. These are baby knee pads, you know, because you decorated the nursery in crushed glass. It's like, why are there these items around? It's because we've been told that this generation of children is so completely vulnerable, they can't do anything safely or successfully without us there. That's why they're not outside playing. That's why there's classes for crawling. And this is just the tip of the iceberg.
You started something called Take Our Children to the Park and Leave Them Their Day.
Yeah, my very popular holiday. You take your children to the park that's closest to you, because in this day and age, like, some kids are going to a magnet school, some kids are going to special ed school, some kids are going to different parochial schools. They don't necessarily know all the same children in the neighborhood. So you bring all the kids to your local park, and if their age is 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, you leave them there. Why?
Why? What do they learn? They learn to manage themselves?
They learn, it's actually more fun than management. It's called playing, right?
They were playing anyway with the parents watching.
They weren't playing necessarily with the parents watching. First of all, they were probably inside. Secondly, they were probably on something electronic. And thirdly, they never had a chance. A lot of kids, remember we talked about just 6% of kids playing outside. They don't necessarily have a chance to even come up with a game. So if you have all the kids there and they don't know what to do, and maybe one of them brought a ball, then they start coming up with something.
They learn how to invent things.
Invent games, make teams, decide who's in or out, compromise, wait their turn, all the stuff that Mother Nature always intended for kids to get. These are like the lessons that they need to become decent citizens, not to mention decent students. Just creating your own fun as opposed to your parents or a coach or a teacher.
One blogger says your work's a giant step backward for child safety.
Yeah, that's the blogosphere. I think that I'm actually very pro-child safety, but I don't believe that children need a security detail every time they leave the home. And I think that when kids get a little bit of street smarts, I think they're safer. One woman, an elderly woman, wrote to my site once that she had been in the allergist's waiting room, which cannot be a giant room, right? And she was so old, she was reading the newspaper with a magnifying glass. And this little 3-year-old boy came over and she was showing him, look, you know, the words get bigger or smaller. And the mother came and said, get away from her. You have to learn immediately not to trust strangers. And so that woman has just made her child into a social cripple who thinks that everybody is equally dangerous, every situation is bad, every stranger is a menace to him. And I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying that the more kids your kids get out in the world, the more they interact with people, the more you gradually let them go and let them become human beings instead of stunted little bonsai trees, they are safer.
You brought this trophy?
Yes.
Which says...
This is my son's trophy. He got it a couple of years ago. I don't know where I should be showing it, but it was from the teenage bowling league, so he's already a teenager.
Congratulations for 8th place.
8th place out of 9. Out of 9. Yeah, because I think the camp really thought that we can't send a kid home without a trophy because they won't be able to take it. The kid can't take it. And that's another vote of non-confidence.
So has your child survived? I mean, I assume
right. He's still weeping.
He brought this home and you mocked it?
Well, he's probably not going to survive seeing it on TV, but he was okay until now. Because you know what? He understands he stinks at bowling, okay? He's willing to take it. Talk about grit. Grit is realizing that you can be bad at some things. You can fall down. You can scrape your knee, and it's not the end of the world. Grit is the ability to say, well, that stank. Let me go forward.
You once taped a TV series. Here's some episodes where you took kids away from overprotective parents.
Yeah.
Here's a sample.
What aren't you allowed to do?
I can't ride a bike. My mom doesn't want me to fall and hurt myself. I can't use a knife. My mom thinks that I'm going to cut my fingers off.
I'm going to teach him how to use a knife safely.
I cut cheese wrong.
What is he doing?
I just cut a tomato.
He cut a tomato. He did.
He was so proud. And
he was really
the
proud.
clips I saw from this show suggest that putting some grit into the kids' lives made them and their parents happier.
He looks happy.
I can do everything that I couldn't do. This makes me happy.
These parents, too, were shocked?
Turns out that all you have to do is take the children away from the very overprotective family for a few hours, for a few days in a row, and say, okay, today you're going to ride a bike, today you're going to use a knife. Once you realize children are built to succeed, they've got grit in them, it's built into them, and you let them do things on their own, they're happy, and the parents are just, the pride and joy take the place of the fear.
Thank you, Lenore Skenazy. Yep. Coming up, do we need to protect college kids from this?
The video also shows Martelli pushing, throwing balls, and screaming gay slurs at players.
And do we need to protect them from this video because the students are white?
This is engineering.
But next, just to keep our morale up, a man who does have grit. Enough to come back after this.
That community no longer exists. The stores, the homes, everything gone.
The South has been torn apart. Tuscaloosa, Alabama, devastated.
A mile-wide tornado carved a path of destruction.
2 years ago, that tornado destroyed much of Tuscaloosa within seconds. This business, Express Oil Change, was turned into this. The owner of Express Oil Change, John Carney, built his business over 25 years. It would have been easy to quit after it was destroyed. If he rebuilt, his insurance company said it would not cover all the costs. Worse, city bureaucrats told him he wouldn't be allowed to rebuild on his property there. And yet he did. Here it is. John Carney has grit. Welcome. So what's grit to you?
Grit, as far as business is, it's a 7-day-a-week, never-ending challenge to try to achieve your goals. It's never give up when it's humanly possible to achieve the final goal. And
Why bother? Most jobs aren't 7 days a week. Running a business often is.
Well, I kind of look at it as you have an agreement with your employees. I had employees that stuck by me, and I thought it was best for me to stick by them. And so I should exhaust every possibility to get back in business as soon as possible.
All right, so the tornado destroys your property.
Right.
And you want to rebuild, and your local government says, no, you can't because your place is an eyesore?
They never said you can't. I just wasn't a desirable business. They were looking for something more aesthetically appealing. They were looking for something
an oil change place.
It's dirty, and we're on one of the busiest intersections in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, a town of about 90,000 people, and with my brother, who is my partner, we've been very successful for 25 years. And when this tornado came through, the city was looking at ways to take advantage, quote unquote, of this situation. And they were talking about rebuilding plans when it took me 3 weeks to get a demolition permit to clean up my mess.
And more delays to get any other permits. They wanted you to turn the building 90 degrees, add certain parking, they mean well, right?
They meant well. I never said they didn't have the best for Tuscaloosa in mind, but their recommendations were that the codes were going back to 1972 and those codes were outdated. If city officials wanted to compromise, they could have compromised, but there was no interest.
They have no sense at the damage they're doing? They just assume everybody can delay 3 weeks?
Well, I think the problem with most politicians today is they have no concept of time or money. They're not spending any money, and they have nothing but time on their hands. And for a business person like me, the clock is always ticking.
Well, I'm glad you got your new business up in spite of all these obstacles. Congratulations. Thank you, John Carney. We put one example of true grit in the middle of this show because now we're going to return to the stories about the feelings police and what some call the wussification of America. What do you think about what this basketball coach is doing?
To kick these kids and throw balls at them and do that stuff, this guy deserves to be in a mental institution, not in a basketball court.
I'm gonna type some code. Only got 20 hours this semester. Calculating, see me innovating. This is engineering.
Were you offended by that video? You weren't? But it's racist and sexist. It promotes white supremacy. Really? That's what at least one college professor and grad student wrote about it. And their attitude is not atypical on college campuses today, says Greg Lukianoff of FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. So why did they say that was racist?
Well, it's part of a grand tapestry of people overreacting on college campuses these days. And this is just another example of how people will take something as innocent. I mean, if you watch that full video, it is nerd-dorable. These guys are making geek jokes, they're talking about being engineers, and it's based on a parody of a hit song.
And they're singing, trying to say, we're not totally nerdy, we like music.
You know, actually what they're saying is we are totally nerdy, and it's kind of great.
But they're all white.
Right.
And they're all male.
Yep. It was a group of friends, and there was a South Asian student in it, and there were some female students in the video. But since it was a group of white friends who wanted to do this free video that promotes the engineering department, someone on campus, a professor and a grad student, actually said this represents white supremacy.
And you've done FIRE now 12 years.
Yes.
You see more of this now?
I think the victory of the right not to be offended. I think this false idea that we have a right not to be offended that has been.
And the assumption in this video was that it offended you if you weren't white.
Yeah, which
suggested engineers are all white.
Which honestly, I don't. Other than the people who wrote this article, it's hard to imagine that anybody was really offended by this. But we've given privilege to this idea that if you claim offense, I'm not allowed to contradict it. This is a perfect trump card in every argument, and campuses are making this worse.
And then the people who are most easily offended get to dictate everyone else's behavior.
Exactly, and then they start doing it insincerely. Basically, if you have a trump card that lets you shut down any argument, who's not going to start abusing that? And we've been abusing it now on campuses for 30 years.
And you say laws meant to protect people make this worse?
Absolutely. Federal laws, federal discrimination laws, universities are so worried about being sued for harassment and discrimination that when you have these kind of overreactions on campus, the general counsel has to say, well, you know, it probably is safer to overreact. So it creates
because
this
you might
spiral.
be sued for a hostile environment.
Exactly.
And a study by the American Association of Colleges said only 30% of college seniors strongly agree with the statement that it's safe to hold unpopular opinions on campus.
Yes.
Only 17% of professors strongly agreed.
But that defeats the entire purpose of higher education.
Which is debate. All right, a few more examples. Harvard has a civility pledge.
Yes.
Freshmen must sign it. What's wrong with that? We should be civil.
It said that you have to agree to hold civility and inclusiveness and kindness on the same level with intellectual attainment. Now, first of all, it's dishonest. The idea that the most elite institution in the country is seriously like, oh, now we're inclusive, whatever.
Kindness equals intellectual attainment.
Exactly. And the thing is also, it's like, okay, so we're just going to tell students what they need to believe now. Well, why don't we just shut down the university if we've already decided what moral philosophy they need to address?
The country was founded by people who were impolite.
Absolutely. Very, very rude to the crown.
State University of New York at Oswego.
So that's just an amazing case. A student journalist wrote to hockey coaches on other campuses about the Oswego's hockey coach, and he wrote at the end.
He was just trying to get information to write a paper himself.
Exactly. Don't feel the need to say just to be nice in your response. And he got a response from a Cornell coach saying that this is suggesting essentially that there's anything that nice that could be said about this coach is offensive. They suspended the student and kicked him off campus as if this guy was a serious threat to campus. And that's all he said.
They notified the police.
Yeah, they notified the police.
With your help, he got back on campus.
Yep.
You publicize these things, the universities get embarrassed, and they say, okay, never mind.
Yep. FIRE's main weapon is public exposure.
Syracuse University.
Oh, Syracuse University. That's a repeat offender, making the top of our Huffington Post worst colleges for free speech list 2 years running.
A black student teacher said he thought schools should hire more teachers from black colleges.
Mm-hmm. And a student who was volunteering at this at inner city high school was offended. He was saying,
a white student.
A white student, saying that you're saying I have to stay on my side of the tracks. I hope we're okay with racism. And he wrote this to his friends on Facebook, basically saying I'm being unappreciated for my volunteer time. And they suspended him from the program for it.
He was required to seek anger management counseling, complete diversity training, and write a paper demonstrating growth regarding cultural diversity to get back into the campus.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't do those things because you guys intervened. There was public outrage. I'm glad you're out there doing that. Thank you, Greg. Sure. Up next, I think this basketball coach is a jerk, but should he have the right to be a jerk? That's one clip of the Rutgers University basketball coach cursing at his players. He threw balls at some players, pushed others. And when video of that hit the airwaves recently, Governor Christie called him an animal. Others said what he did was appalling, and the coach was fired. But the Five's Eric Bolling said this about the outrage.
It's time to toughen up. I talk about the wussification of America, wussification of American men. This is it.
Wussification? I don't know if I agree in this case. A college coach is supposed to be a leader, a role model. That guy was a jerk. He wasn't even effective. His teams had a losing record. And bullies are a big problem in schools, and now we're told bullying is getting much worse. But Sue Porter, the author of Bully Nation, disagrees. She says bullies are no worse now, and overprotective parents and legislators do more harm than good. So really protecting the kids from bullies?
Well, here's the thing you've got to understand, John, is that kids are no different than they were when we were children. And yet our view of them has changed radically. And that's something I'm very interested in because we now see...
You're a school psychologist.
Yes, I am. And now I'm an administrator. And so I know from experience that kids are not meaner to each other than they used to be. They're not doing nastier things. And yet
they learn more lessons about kindness.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'd argue that they're actually a nicer group than we were.
Me too.
Yeah, they're more polite. They really are. At least the kids I work with are a lot nicer than I was. But things shifted after Columbine, and we are now a nation that is not only fearful of children, but we are raging at them.
What are we doing that's harmful?
Well, we no longer call kids stupid when they fail a math test. And yet when they make a mistake in a relationship with another child, we are giving them a label that fixes in our mind who that child is.
You're a bully.
Absolutely. And conversely, you're a victim. That's just as dangerous because you're giving the child a message that their identity comes from their pain and weakness.
All right, back to the Rutgers basketball coach. Wasn't that an evil thing he did, and shouldn't he have been fired?
Coaches do extreme things to get extreme responses. I was an athlete in college, and well, my coach never said any words, but I think what that guy did is abused his power, and that's what our standard definition of bullying is. So was he a bully? I think he was just a bad coach and probably need a lot of discipline.
But the reaction to this, you say the reaction went too far?
Well, let me tell you, as soon as we use the term bully, we have license to get enraged with whoever we give that term to. And
you argue that coaches are supposed to be tough, and athletes perform better when the coach yells at them.
Oh, well, yeah, I wouldn't have performed very well as an athlete if my coach had said, "Yay, you're so great."
So this kind of behavior is okay for coaches. Not his, but...
Not his. But I think you don't get people to perform at their best just by telling them they're great. You get them to perform by taking them to the edge. You get them to perform by making them go inside and find something they've never found before.
Though we agree he went too far. But now they're defining bullying, you say, by things like unfriendliness?
Yes, persistent.
Rolling your eyes?
Yeah, persistent unfriendliness. So when you work with middle school kids, you find that this is how they're defining bullying now. So it's not the classic big kid shaking down the little kid for lunch money. It's, I talked to a school principal a couple of weeks ago. She got a call from a mom. My child's being bullied because someone told her her earrings were too big. That's what's going on.
And you mentioned middle school. It's not high school where the biggest problems are.
It's middle school. The average middle school kid is so self-conscious and so self-absorbed, they are going to see slights everywhere. And a big part of what we have to do to help them develop grit is to figure out how to deal with that and let them know that's part of life. You are going to feel bad sometimes, and you've got to find a way to get through it. How do you do that?
And anti-bullying laws make that tougher?
I think they do. If we transpose the word bully here and call it anti-child, and that's what I like to do, because we are legislating against children's mistakes. We are legislating against things that you and I experienced and perhaps did as kids. And once that happens, we're starting to see kids as outlaws now, and they haven't changed.
Now, one other case that annoys you, a Wisconsin anchorwoman who put on some weight, got an email saying, surely you don't consider yourself a suitable example for young people, girls in particular. The anchorwoman then went on TV and complained about the email.
October is National Anti-Bullying Month, and this is a problem that is growing every day in our schools and on the internet. The internet has become a weapon. Our schools have become a battleground, and this behavior is learned. It is passed down from people like the man who wrote me that email.
So what's the problem?
So if we look at the classic definition of bullying, it's got to do with power. There was no power differential. She received an email she didn't like. That guy couldn't fire her. The only thing he did was influence her feeling state. And yet she felt she could call him a bully, and that she also felt, so when you call somebody a bully, you yourself never have to look at your behavior. And she went on TV to talk about it, and what about that guy's reaction? She probably doesn't care about that.
All right, Sue Porter, thank you very much. Coming up as we ask whatever happened to grit, what do Vincent van Gogh, Thomas Edison, and Charles Schultz have in common? That's next.
Ready, Colonel?
Ready.
Turn him loose, McCartney!
Today, some people make fun of Westerns, but those movies often told a true story about the grit that made America possible. The pioneers left relatively safe places to travel enormous distances, only to tough it out in wilderness, to turn what one writer called empty land used for nothing into ranches and farms. Breaking sod, spending long days plowing, suffering through cold winters. Grit is what it took to create civilization. Grit requires delaying gratification, wanting something bigger than yourself, and in the case of America's pioneers, often starving, losing children, losing wives and husbands to build communities. As John Wayne's character put it in The Big Trail, we're building a nation. We've got to suffer. No great trail was ever blazed without hardship. That's life. Grit is the stuff of life. Greatness is often achieved only after repeated failure. Examples. Van Gogh was unable to sell his paintings. He sold only one during his lifetime, yet he painted 900. Cartoonist Charles Schulz had every cartoon he submitted to his high school yearbook rejected. Peanuts later became one of the most successful cartoons of all time. Thomas Edison's teachers told his mom he was too stupid to learn. He was fired from his first 2 jobs for being non-productive. But he had the grit to try and try again and went on to accumulate 1,000 U.S. patents, including those for the electric railway and, of course, the light bulb. And the light bulb followed 1,000 unsuccessful attempts. A reporter asked him, how did it feel to fail 1,000 times? Edison replied, I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was an invention with 1,000 steps. That's grit. It's great that we live in a wealthy country, one with a welfare state so big that we worry about poor people getting fat. But what makes most people happy is not comfort. It's earned success, success you struggle for. The opposite of earned success, says psychologist Martin Seligman, is learned helplessness. In experiments, he says, when good things occurred that weren't earned, like nickels coming out of slot machines, it did not increase people's well-being. It produced helplessness. People gave up, became passive. That passivity is a threat to our future. Everyone goes through pain and loss. We face obstacles. It's the struggle to overcome those obstacles that's the stuff of life and the route to happiness and prosperity. And that's our show. Thanks for watching. See you next week.